Chet and Nicole, we ready to get started?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I started the YouTube live stream and it is 1 o'clock. I believe you have a quorum too.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, welcome everybody to the March 8th CVTA Technical Advisory Committee meeting. We have welcome introduction for our new members. So Justin Stouter, am I saying that correctly?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. So you will be our new CBTA TAC member for New Kent, and Kelly will be our alternate.
Yes, yep, that's correct.
Okay, excellent. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next statement regarding virtual meetings that's posted on the website, so we do not need to read, but that is out there for if anybody has any questions or would like to know what about that. Next item will be roll call and certification of a quorum. Nicole?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos.
Here.
Charles City County, Ms. Russell.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Walker.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman.
Here.
Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas. Mr. Flagg. Henrico County, Chair Yor.
Here.
Ms. Meidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Mr. Stouter.
Here.
Ms. Leduc. Powhatan County, Mr. Chardine. Mr. Pompey. City of Richmond, Ms. Clark, and she's connecting right now. Welcome, Ms. Clark. I'm just doing the roll call for attendance. And City of Richmond, Mr. Bridewell. DRPT, Mr. Brule.
Here.
Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
VDOT, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblet.
Here.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean.
Here.
And Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Thank you. This concludes the roll call for attendance. And Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Next item is consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda. Chet, any known amendments?
No, sir. None I can think of.
Okay, excellent. Item 2, approval of the February 8th, 2021 CVTA TAC action meeting minutes. If everybody's had a chance to review any corrections, otherwise we will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, this is Diana. I make a motion that we approve the last
Thank you, Diana.
CVTA TAC meeting minutes.
Do we have a second?
Barb Smith, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Minutes are approved. Number 3, item 3, public comment period. Chet, I believe we did receive a public comment last week. Would you like to read that for the record?
Yes, we did. And this is it was a comment that was sent to the CVTA general mailbox, but staff thought that it applied specifically to the TAC. So we figured we'd start with you. It is from a gentleman named Carl Schwendeman. The subject is, could the Central Transportation Authority fund one of Powhatan's sidewalk projects? And I'll just read it. It's just a couple paragraphs. Good day. My name is Carl, and I have a question. I saw on the proposed budget that Powhatan County has no proposed spending plans for 2021 for the Virginia Transportation Authority. Is there still time to change that to include one of Powhatan's 3 sidewalk projects, such as Powhatan County has a $450,000 proposal to extend the village courthouse sidewalks 900 feet down Skaggs Road? from the intersection of Old Buckingham Road and Skaggs Road to a baseball field. We also have a $1.9 million project to extend the village sidewalks 7/10 of a mile from Old Buckingham Road and Man Road to the Powhatan Middle School. Powhatan County also has a $480,000 village sidewalks east by 1,000 feet. Powhatan County even had a debate last night about trying to fund sidewalk expansion in the village of Powhatan. Could the CVTA at least add one or two of the $400,000 village sidewalk projects to its 2021 funding plan for Powhatan County? Thank you, Carl. And he also sent 2 renderings of sidewalk plan on Huguenot Road, and a note about this is what it would look like if 3 to 5 foot sidewalk shoulders and a 5 foot sidewalk will be added to it. We did, staff did forward this to Mr. Chardon and Mr. Pompey, and so they are aware. And then we've entered it into public comment. I think it probably makes sense to post this on the website along with this meeting date, just as a transparency to note that there was public comment received and the committee's heard it. I believe Mr. Chardon's here. If anyone has any questions or comments, I think we could certainly entertain those now.
Thank you, Chet. Any questions, comments for Chet on the public comment? Okay, hearing none, move on to the chair's report. We'll keep it brief. I'd like to thank everybody for their continued participation and the ongoing stream of meetings we have collectively between CVTA TAC, various subcommittees, the full CVTA Finance, not to mention all of the TPO TAC meetings. I don't know how Chet, Nicole, you amongst others keep track of them all because it's a challenge. So thank you for that. I will say that we are having conversations following the last CBTA full meeting about returning to a in-person option for that meeting. I think based on my conversation with the CBTA chair, Mr. Thornton, that we're looking to keep the March meeting 100% virtual, and then the April meeting, Enrico's going to be able to host at the training center again, which is where we hosted the meeting. I guess it was maybe September of last year, Chet, at our training facility out on Parham Road. So we'll look to host that, the full CPTA meeting there in April. And then Chet, I believe you worked with Shane Mann on switching the availability of the district headquarters building for the May meeting.
That's correct. Yes, their new building, they're eager to get some folks in there and give them a tour. So we're excited about being able to travel down to the new training center.
Very good. Shane, thank you for making that arrangement. So as of now, that looks like that will be fine with the chair for that schedule. And I assume the preference of this group is to continue to meet virtual for the time being, since I guess our best option for in-person meeting would be at the TPO offices, which is, I guess, relatively tight space for this many people. So, so I guess stay tuned for any future changes in that. And I will say that the in-person meetings for full CPTA will continue to have a virtual option for members and staff that will prefer to continue to meet virtually. So that's all I had. Next is the CBTA tax staff update, which will, I guess, be you, Chet, and Eric.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give a brief summary of the Finance Committee meeting. The last meeting was held on, well, the meeting coming up is March 10th, so in a couple days. February 10th meeting, just to bring a couple things to your attention, there were discussions regarding the financial policies and procedures document for the authority. A lot of these items are still in the category of standing up the authority in its first year of operation. And the Finance Committee is doing a lot of great work to make sure that all those foundational type of policies and procedures are there. There was a draft MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, regarding fiscal services between the authority and the city of Richmond. That was action was recommended on that, and I believe that the authority did take action to adopt that at the end of February. So now there are MOUs between the authority and Chesterfield County, and the authority and the city of Richmond to provide specific services regarding fiscal services related to the ongoing work of the authority. Invoices, something that's not typically exciting, but that's exciting for us because that was something that was, it's a new thing. Plan RBA support services and insurance premiums were invoiced, and this tells me that we're starting to get into a groove with the authority, and business is being done, and we're taking account of the work that's being carried forward and making sure that we understand that. And then finally, a draft of the fiscal year 22 administrative and operating budget was shared as a first review of what that budget might look like. It's very similar to the current budget for FY21. If you've seen that, the consideration, I think, moving forward is whether we add, whether the authority wants to add additional capabilities for staff support, hiring specific staff for authority work, or whether that can still remain to be contracted through Plan RBA. So those discussions are ongoing, and I believe that's on the agenda again for Wednesday's meeting this week. The second item, 5B, was included. There was a link in the agenda to the GRTC Memorandum of Agreement. So this is kind of the first draft of what an MOA might look like between the authority and a member government. GRTC has been interested in getting this set up. So this is the first time that we've looked at that. Similar agreements will be drafted between the authority and our member governments. But I wanted to give Eric a chance if he had any other items he wanted to share about this to, I guess, prep you all for future agreements that will be coming out for local review.
Thanks, Chet, Mr. Chairman, members of the TAC. Yeah, the GRTC MOA is in your packet. You've had a chance to see that and review that, or if not, please do so. GRTC was great to work with on this MOA. They had their eyes and hands on it and were able to contribute to its preparation after an initial draft. So it does incorporate their views. I believe from not speaking for GRTC, but I believe from their perspective and from the perspective of staff, this is in acceptable shape. It will be before the Finance Committee for review at their meeting this Wednesday, the 10th. So we wanted to bring it to you all so you were aware of it, had a chance to review it for informational purposes, and also with an eye towards this serving as a sort of a rough draft or an initial draft of the MOAs that will be presented to your respective local governments for consideration and recommended execution in the near term. The MOA governs basically the financial distributions and the roles and responsibilities of GRTC and the CVTA, and also the accountability mechanisms that are there and reporting mechanisms. So they're all tied together. So that's the gist of it. I sent a copy of that in its current form to all of your respective legal counsel. So, and I shared with them that this would be basically an initial draft of what they could expect to come for to represent an initial draft of an MOA that they might expect between the CVTA and their member jurisdiction. So please confer with your legal counsel and your executive leadership to make sure that this is acceptable. If you want tweaks or changes, that's fine. We're happy to consider all input as always. I would like to have as much conformity to as much uniformity as possible among the MOAs. I don't want a different MOA between one jurisdiction versus another. I think we need to have one. So if we're going to get input, please make sure it's shared so that everybody can consider it, and then we can get on everybody on the same page. That may take some time. It may take multiple exchanges of drafts and language like we went through on other documents throughout the past year. But I think at the end it'll be a better product if everybody has a hand in it. So thank you all. Happy to answer any questions either right now or going forward. Always feel free to reach out to me if you want. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions for either Eric or Chet?
Mr. Chair, this is Diana.
Yes, Diana.
Let's see, just a few points of concern with the MOA document. I think that it is still a little bit difficult for the localities to review this as a template for use at the locality. It is a format for GRTC. And I also have a comment that I think that putting it on the agenda with regard to GRTC, and again, saying that it would be the template that we all keep my good friend Barbara's comment in mind, that when we pass something or review something in the format, that we remember that after it becomes and/or is approved, it becomes harder to change. So I do ask that we are given a version that is reflective of what you intend the locality to make comments on and utilize as its format. And then with that, I think I can have the additional comments that I have currently with GRTCs, but I could specifically speak towards the city of Richmond.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, this is just obviously more in line with what GRTC and the CVTA would want. Again, this is just to give you an idea, flavor for what an MOA between the CVTA and the jurisdictions might look like. We're going to start customizing these for each respective jurisdiction, and I'll distribute them out accordingly. But yeah, feel free to comment and provide specific drafting issues or point out requested revisions at any time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Eric, I have a question on that. So how much difference do you anticipate between the GRTC MOU and the, just in terms of basic content before all the edits?
Well, I mean, frankly, as little as possible. I mean, I think we want consistency and uniformity, just so we're not, just for obvious reasons. You don't want to have, you want to have the same processes, the same accountability, the same roles and responsibilities in place for every jurisdiction. Not, certain jurisdictions have to do certain things one way and other jurisdictions have to do things another way. That doesn't, to me, that I doubt that would fly. So we want to have uniformity. So, if you want to think about it this way, just take out, cut and paste GRTC and put in there City of Richmond or Powhatan or Goochland or whatever, into where the GRTC nomenclature is in the MOA you have before you. But naturally, it's going to be different. What GRTC does under the legislation and under this MOA is necessarily different than how the jurisdictions themselves are going to operate. But so naturally, there's going to be some changes there. This is fundamentally based upon the Northern Virginia Agreement that we've always, their documents we've always been looking to in this process. So there are the fundamental structure of it is similar to that. I will state that the Hanover Agreement is probably going to be a little different, and I'm going to want to talk with Dennis and Joe about that probably offline because of the town of Ashland arrangement and how the monies are going to flow between the two of those jurisdictions. So that's going to be a different process, or there's going to be things in that particular agreement that are different than say the Chesterfield Agreement. But other than that, they should be as uniform as possible. And for instance, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority has an arrangement with Fairfax and Herndon, I believe, that provides for the distribution of funds through the county to the town. So, but anyway, that's just to point that out. But we'll talk more about it. Again, this is for informational purposes. I ask that you go back to your respective legal counsel. They already have this as well, directly from me. So they've had it for, I guess, almost a week now. And so you can speak with them, speak with your executive leadership and figure out what improvements or changes you want to see in this. So happy to take all input.
Thank you. And Erica, you mentioned that the draft GRTC MOA will be on the Finance Committee agenda for this Wednesday, but as a discussion item, will it need to come back to either Finance Committee or the full CVTA for final approval at some point?
It will. Ultimately, the full CVTA will have to approve it along with the GRTC itself. But
okay.
So we'll see what the Finance Committee says on Wednesday, making sure we're on the right track. GRTC is going to participate in that meeting, and so they can answer questions from their perspective. If the Finance Committee is okay with it, they may report it up with a recommendation for approval to the full CVTA, but there may just be a discussion item. Chet, you want to? Is it for information only on Wednesday, or is it for potential action?
Let me check quickly.
For information only, Eric.
Information only, yeah. Okay, so we wanted to give a quick, sort of an allowance for them to review it, provide input. GRTC will be there to answer questions and provide their input, and then we'll bring it back at the March meeting if we, need to make any changes or whatever, and then they can take it up for action at the March meeting. I'm sorry, at the April meeting.
And then you anticipate the draft locality agreements will follow that, depending on how quickly that process goes, I guess, within the next month or so?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm planning on working to customize the MOAs for each jurisdiction within the next week or 10 days, starting to put pen to paper on those. Wanted to give everybody an initial review. And so, before anybody wastes a lot of time writing up a document that's going to be changed. So if you have input, please bring it to me as soon as possible so we can put that into the initial drafts.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Any other questions for Eric or Chet?
Well, I just wanted to clarify, this is Chet, that there's going to be multiple month periods for this to be reviewed. So it's not going to be rushed through.
Right.
I think each individual jurisdiction outside of maybe Hanover, those MOAs are hopefully going to be very similar. They're all going to be different than the GRTC one because there's no regional public transportation plan requirement. There's no 15% reference. It's going to be 50% or however it's discussed. So there's lots of things that are going to be different with the member jurisdiction agreements. But first there will be a draft. It'll go through finance and very similar to what we did with GRTC and legal and everything else. So there'll be time for everybody to take take a good hard look at it and make sure it meets everybody's needs.
Absolutely.
Very good. All right, no other questions. We'll move on to item number 6 in the agenda, top of page 2, our regional project prioritization update. Ms. Walker has been kind enough to join us and will give us a overview of this process today.
Sure thing. Thanks, Todd. Good afternoon, everybody. The subcommittee on prioritization, we've had 2 meetings. Our committee is tasked with establishing the prioritization process relative to the 35% funding from the CVTA pot. And per the code, we are to make that process quantifiable, and it needs to quantifying benefits and relating to cost. So we spent our first 2 meetings. I think it was very productive. Our meetings were very productive. We focused on establishing what projects would be eligible for this particular pot of money. And we spent time discussing how we can make that list relative to cost, in that we know we have a lot of regional needs, but only so much CVTA regional pot money to go around. And with that as our backdrop, we came up with some initial criteria by project type. Highway projects, we are saying limited access roads, limited access roadways are eligible, arterials as well. We are going to take a look at arterial criteria and maybe establish some sort of volume threshold. We have to figure that out still. Bike ped, regional bike ped routes, obviously fall line trail type that has a multi-jurisdictional defined alignment type of route. We all discussed and agreed that that should be eligible for the regional pot. Rail, as well as intermodal and transit projects. Well, rail and transit projects, we had a lot of good discussion there. Transit infrastructure, regional infrastructure, capital type of projects, particularly using authority money to leverage. A lot of those projects are probably pretty costly. And so the subcommittee had pretty good consensus that those projects should be eligible, but that we need to, we'll probably have some further discussion about that, but that it would be used primarily for leveraging other funds for those types of projects. So we spent a lot of good time, made some good headway on regional eligibility, setting that criteria. We have some more refining to do at the next meeting. Our next meeting is next Friday, the 19th. We will be, again, touching on some of the loose ends for regional eligibility, and then we're going to start to talk about what measures we should be using to evaluate the benefits for projects so that we can prioritize them and rank them. So a lot of folks are on this call or on the subcommittee, so be thinking about what measures we should be using to evaluate those eligible project types, and also be thinking about leveraging. We're going to start some of that discussion at our next meeting as well. We gave ourselves an aggressive deadline, beginning of May, to have our deliverable will be a document that summarizes this process that we'll make as we'll provide on to the full authority, having gone through TAC and the Finance Committee, but ultimately up to the full authority. So we're pushing for May. We'll see how that goes, but based on the last meeting and everybody's participation, I'm hopeful that we can keep chugging right along. So that is my update on prioritization.
Thank you, Chessa. Any questions, comments for Chessa regarding the process? You did such a good job of summarizing there. Everybody has no questions. So thank you, Chessa. Next item 7, certification reporting for FY 2022. Chet, you're going to start this, and I guess Eric's going to chip in.
Yes. So the full authority at their last meeting accepted the spending plan for FY21 and granted TAC the ability to make some tweaks or suggestions in terms of how this spending plan would would be presented for FY22. Essentially, if TAC is happy with the way the spending plan worked in terms of the spreadsheet and the details that were in it for FY21, you can move forward and use the same thing. But if there's any additional items or something didn't seem to work out correctly, or was portraying the wrong information, then there's some wiggle room to make updates for FY22. One of the things that we would like to do as we plan ahead is to think more proactively, and I think staff would like to have this spending plan finalized by May so that it can move forward and be in place by the time we get to July, which is the start of the next fiscal year. How that works out with meeting agendas, we're still looking at, but I think it's never too early to start thinking about next year. And so unless TAC would like to make changes to that, staff would like to start circulating a blank template for FY22 and let folks start filling in that information as soon as they're able. And we can certainly follow up and fine tune it as we move forward. So that was item 7A, just an update to you about where things stand for next year. And then related to that, before I turn it over to Eric, 7B, there was some discussion, and I don't remember if it may have been Barb Smith, but had a great idea for doing quarterly updates so that once you're not locked in at the beginning of the fiscal year in terms of the projects you've included in your spending plan, that there might be an opportunity to come back at a regular interval and make updates to that, whether, priorities change, projects get added at some point. Again, the spending plan isn't binding, but it's a good roadmap for where the expectations are for the year for each member. So that's something to consider as well as we think about FY22 and how that's distributed and updated. Mr. Chair, that's what I wanted to report on A and B. If you wanted to give Eric a chance, or we can take questions on those now if there are any.
Before we move to Eric, does anybody have any questions based on what Chet has updated us on thus far? Hearing none, Eric, would you like to add some content here?
Yes, sir. So beginning with the annual spending plan, what we're talking about next is the annual reporting requirements, and it starts with the spending plan. And there's a requirement, obviously the fundamental requirement under the CVTA Act is that the monies deposited in the CVTA fund shall be used solely for transportation purposes benefiting the localities comprising Planning District 15 and admin and operating expenses. And there's other requirements that provide for accountability. Each locality has to annually provide sufficient documentation showing that the revenues distributed under subdivision D3 were used for the purposes set forth therein. Same requirements are imposed upon GRTC as well. And then there's the annual certification requirement. So, there's basically a three or four step process that we need to build or construct together to provide for that reporting and certification every year. And that starts with we're thinking through this, right? So that's why we want this discussion with the TAC to occur so that you all can provide your input and help frame this. But it starts out with the spending plan, which we have currently, and then we'll be working on for the next fiscal year, and then any tweaks along the way. If a jurisdiction needs to change a project, reprioritize a project, as long as those projects are consistent with what consistent with what the funding is for, then, they'll be incorporated into the spending plan, and any amendments there too. And then all of that would be incorporated into your quarterly reports, which would be submitted to the CVTA for review and approval. And then at the end of the year, all of that documentation would be put together into the annual certification, which would be signed by your CAO or submitted by your chief elected officer. I think either one would suffice. It's just a matter of what you all think is appropriate. I would probably start with recommending that the chief elected officer be the one to sign the certification, but some local governments may want the CAO to take that responsibility. But that's sort of, you say what you're going to do, you do it, you make any changes, any updates that are necessary, and then you certify what you've done. That's sort of the full circle. And then you start all over again. So that's kind of the process. The certification instrument, I think, can be very, very simple. A 1 or 2 sentence certification document submitted with the documentation at the end of every year would work. It could say something as simple as, I hereby certify that the funds distributed to locality X by the CVTA throughout FY whatever were spent in accordance and in compliance with the spending plan as amended, as the case may be, and consistent with applicable law and regulations. Something to that effect. Very easy to write up. Keep it simple. And that's what we're thinking. So please let us know if that works for you, and we'll start building those documents together with your input.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions for Eric or Chet on that item? Actually, Chet, I have a question going back to the suggestion about quarterly updates. So obviously this year was unique in that we started mid-year and we were not mid-year, but we really got things up and running mid-year to develop the initial spending plans. I think it was a February ultimate submission. So if you look at quarterly, that would put us in May if we're going to follow a quarterly update schedule, which is kind of getting towards the end of the fiscal year. Is that something we want to consider? Basically send out a request for all localities to update the spending plan for 21 in the May timeframe prior to the closeout of the fiscal year.
Yes, sir. I mean, I think being the first year and the schedule being a little off, I think we could be flexible in terms of when the update was made. I mean, May is just as good as any other time. So I think we could certainly coordinate on the staff side to send out a communication at whatever date the TAC would choose to so that updates could be made.
I think at least from Henrico's standpoint, we took a very conservative projection number based on first year projected revenues and kind of came in the low end of that. So I guess we have 3 months worth of revenues received at this point. So probably with a couple more, we'll have a much better gauge on what the final projections for FY21 look like. So we may, for example, come back in and add a couple items and pull from our draft 22 list, pull into 21 for our local plan. So other localities may be taking a similar approach, or some localities that kind of had no specific projects identified initially may wish to add something towards the end of the year. So I think maybe it's a good idea if we look at a kind of a May update from everybody. Welcome to get any feedback from the group on that. I guess the silence is a concurrence, maybe?
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me, Todd. This is Barb.
All right, thanks, Barb. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Mr. Chair, this is Diana.
Yes, Darana.
Yeah, I think that the May time frame is reasonable as well. And I guess as I was listening to you, just for clarity, are you looking to update both your projected, spending, meaning like the dollar amount, as well as adding additional projects? Or subtracting additional projects? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. I mean, we had a fair number of projects based on a very conservative projection for FY21 local revenues. So as we get a comfort level that number is going to potentially be higher, then we'll probably pull a couple projects we have on our draft 22 list into the 21. So we would be appropriating in our end probably in June would be our next budget appropriation. So I think that opportunity may exist for other localities as well if revenues are coming in higher than originally projected.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, and Chet, in regard to that, I think that it yields beyond like the bigger process in the dollar amount, the projection amounts coming from a CVTA, whether that be the administration or whatever staff. And, kind of having that overall beginning budget number, I think will begin to be important as, because you're going to have, I don't know if we're going to have localities working off of a dollar amount that doesn't equal or may not equal the projected dollar amount for the entire authority. I just think that's something that we, and it may be, something you want to pass along to Martha. I'm not sure who's working on which part of it, but I think that becomes important as we look at these adjustments and then what's being adjusted and, what really is being adjusted against.
Yes, this is Chad. Thanks, Dorena. I believe that is one of the items that's on the agenda for Wednesday's Finance Committee meeting to talk about the projections. I'm not sure if there's actually going to be numbers on Wednesday or if they're still talking process, but I think that's one of the tasks that the finance directors from the region are working on. So hopefully that'll be helpful. Mr. Chair, it looks like the CBTA TAC meets on May 10th. That would seem like a natural, if we could get an update in the agenda for that meeting, we could discuss it at the TAC meeting on that day.
That would be the request for an update, and then you give a deadline a week or two after that, or would you like to have the update by the 10th?
Whatever you would prefer, we'd be happy to do either.
Okay. Maybe we can include it as an agenda item to discuss further, and then that would be the call for the update, and then maybe give everybody about a 2-week window to provide updates back. If that works for you. So maybe put us I guess, beginning of the last week of May.
That works. I guess the question, maybe thinking on our toes, and this may be a legal question, are these updates something that would need board action, or is it a TAC administrative kind of activity? I could see arguments both directions.
For their spending plans?
Yes, an update to the spending plan.
If it's the CVTA spending plan, yeah, I think reporting that up to the finance committee for their recommendation to the full board would probably be the best way to go. I mean, if somebody else has a different view, I'm happy to listen.
We have a couple months. We can investigate and come up with the best plan.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Eric.
Any other questions or comments regarding the reporting requirements and spending plans? All right, seeing none, item 8 is next on the agenda, Regional Public Transportation Plan Progress Report. Adrian, you're going to be able to give us an update on that?
Sure. Good afternoon. So we have jumped into public engagement for this phase 1. We have updated our website, so now all of the information is listed there. The concepts that were developed at that core design retreat are updated on there. We have the survey is now live for the public to give input on the different concepts, and those will stay. The survey closes on March 12th. At that point in time, we'll look at and evaluate to come up with a report on what the public feedback is on the 2 concepts. And then we have set for March, I believe it's the 15th, the 15th, 16th, and 17th, where we will be re-meeting after we get the recommendations from the public and developing kind of the recommended plan that will be incorporated into the draft plan at that point in time. We also have set up another meeting with the Public Transportation Working Group. That is set up, I think, March 23rd. And in that, we'll kind of talk about the rest of the network as well, how that fits in with the regional kind of prioritization and the regional funds. So we are definitely making progress and hope to have the draft complete by, I would say, end of March and April. And still the goal is to have the whole thing done by May. Questions?
Thank you, Adrian. Any questions for Adrian on this effort? All right, seeing none. Next item 9, Transit Service Governance Report, Progress Report. Chet?
Yes, thank you. The Transit Service Governance Report is well underway. The AECOM ENO Center team is following the scope of services. They are developing their background materials, and they are right now in the midst of interviews with key stakeholders around the region. I'm trying to find the update I was given. So they are preparing for a meeting this Friday, where they're gonna talk with our subcommittee about their findings so far, an overview of GRTC and its structure, descriptions of services, governance, and funding profile, and then key findings so far. We are there, as I said, they're continuing to hold stakeholder interviews. I believe they've talked to a number of jurisdictions already, and I believe they're planning on speaking with city officials soon this week. So that's underway. The scope is on track, so that we can get a draft for review well in advance of the end of the fiscal year, and make sure that things are all accounted for in terms of what was required and what the expectations are according to the scope of work. We do have biweekly meetings scheduled. As I said, there's a meeting this Friday, and then every other Friday moving forward with the Transit Service Governance Subcommittee. So I think that in terms of the work itself, it's moving forward accordingly, and I think everybody that's participating is happy with the progress so far. Be happy to take any questions on that. I did have one additional item regarding the subcommittee itself that I think we need some clarification on from TAC. But if there's any questions about the process, I'd be happy to entertain those now.
Any questions for Chet on that? Seeing none. Yeah, I was actually going to bring up I guess what you're going to cover now. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So there was I overlooked the membership of this this subcommittee to deal with the Regional Transit Service Governance Report, and mistakenly sent out invitations for the last meeting to the RTPO Public Transportation Work Group, which is a different group, and that group has very similar membership, but not entirely mirrors what was established for the Transit Service Governance Committee. So we went back, we realized the error and went back and looked at previous minutes. So back in September, the CVTA TAC established a subcommittee for the purpose of supporting the Transit Service Governance Report. And Nicole, jump in if I'm saying something incorrectly.
Would it be helpful if we share the membership list that we currently have for the Transit Governance Subcommittee?
Excellent. Yes, please.
All right, let's do that. Okay. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. So as you look at the members, it's a who's who of dignitaries from around the region. But one thing that we did note was that the meeting, the last steering committee meeting that had AECOM and ENO Center on it, we also included at least 2 members of the Public Transportation Work Group that were not on this subcommittee, and that would be a member of the CTAC, the Community Transportation Advisory Committee, as well as ride finders. So we wanted to clarify that that these folks are okay to continue including, and that that no one had any major concerns or issues with expanding the membership of the Transit Service Governance Committee by a member or 2. So that's Todd. That's what we're asking for. Is there concurrence from the TAC that the committee as presented on the screen is okay with everyone to move forward with this as the subcommittee guiding the transit governance report?
Yes, thank you, Chet. So can we do that by consensus?
Yes.
All right. So everybody okay with what Chet is proposing in terms of its tweak?
That comment.
Yes. Or,
It seems like for the Transit Governance Committee, since it is pretty focused on transit governance, that the committee members should be affiliated strictly with A, but I'm happy to hear other people's opinions about that.
Barb, this is Darvana, Mr. Chair. You went out, you said they should be affiliated with what? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The CVTA,
Mm.
and not necessarily the TPO.
Mhm. And then, Mr. Chair, Chet, you said that the additional members were who? Did that add the CTAC and then ride finders would be the 2 additional?
That's correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the member from CTAC that was attending was Lisa Guthrie, who's obviously transit focused as well.
I mean, I would ask that maybe if there's a rural or a county on this particular forum, if they would like to speak up, because I mean, a little bit, I think that, Lisa and VTA could potentially be their voice, but I don't want to say that when maybe one of them would want to say that, but otherwise, I'm not quite sure if it's a big of a difference, but
Nicole, for the benefit of the group, can you scroll down to the bottom of the list so everybody can see the full list again?
Yes, and this list already includes CTAC. It does not include ride finders right now. And that's it.
So this is Barb, Todd.
Yes, Barb.
It would be great to have a rule on the subcommittee. And I do like the idea of having Ms. Guthrie on there representing transit in a big picture way. Maybe because of the lack of affiliation with CVTA, she would be a non-voting member on the committee.
Okay, that's a valid suggestion. So back to Darona's point about a rural, so we don't have any of the rurals on the committee.
Charles City is in the chat box saying that they would like to serve, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Chet, any issues with adding Charles City at this point?
No, not at all. Well, as I said, we've had one meeting, so this is still fresh. I would offer that we don't have a chair. This isn't a formal committee. We don't have a chair and a vice chair. This is essentially serving as a steering committee to the consultant.
Right.
So, I mean, if we want to we don't have a voting procedure, but if the TAC would like to formalize this more, we could do that.
Do you really see a need for a formal subcommittee with a chair, vice chair, and voting structure, or you think it's sufficient to have it kind of continue to function as a steering committee?
I see the need for it to continue as a steering committee.
Okay.
It's not a long-term committee. I think once this governance report is complete, we may want to assess whether the committee needs to keep operating.
So to Barb's point about having Lisa Guthrie on there, but maybe as non-voting is not relevant. She can continue to serve and basically.
That'd be my recommendation. Yes.
Barb, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And everybody's okay with adding Charles City. I assume that will be Rhonda Russell as a member representing rural interest.
This is Barb again.
Yes, Barb.
I'm definitely good with Rhonda serving. I would just say, as far as Ms. Guthrie, I would put her down as representing her organization rather than CTAC.
I'm good with that. Does that work for you, Chet?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
we could do that.
Um,
One other item, Mr. Year, staff would recommend that the GRTC membership could include Adrian as well as John O'Keefe, so that Ride Finders has their ability to work out, or we could just ask for GRTC to work it out internally in terms of who's attending. Ride Finders had requested the ability to participate, so we just wanted to make sure that we paid attention to that.
I'll defer to Adrian and the rest of the TAC members on that. I think as long as we have representation from GRTC, I would think it would be fine for them to determine who that representation is, and if it's more than one participating on these calls, I don't see an issue with that, but I'll defer to the group and to Adrian.
Thank you.
This is Adrian. I can discuss it with Ride Finders. At this point in time, I think that I'm okay as the member, can coordinate with them internally. But if anything different, I can let you guys know.
That would be good. Thank you, Adrian. And for the benefit of the group, if anybody's not aware that Ride Finders is a entity of GRTC. Technically, they are I guess a division of GRTC. Okay, so unless anybody has any other issues or concerns, we'll move forward with this membership. And Rhonda, welcome to the group. Chet and Nicole, can you make sure that Rhonda is included on the next meeting invite? And I just checked my calendar. I don't have that invite either. Maybe it went to Sharon, but can you make sure you forward to me as well?
Agendas will go out today.
Great, thank you. All right, any other comments, questions regarding the governance report? Seeing none, we can move on to item 10, which is the TAC member comments. Does any of the members have anything they'd like to bring to the group? Okay, seeing nothing, moves us to item 11, next meeting, which is scheduled for April 12th. Again, it will be 100% virtual. And unless we have anything else, we can adjourn.
Hey, Todd, I had a quick question. This is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
I was wondering again, the due date for comments on the MOA.
Yeah.
There's, Chet, if you want, there's no real due date. If you were talking about the GRTC MOA, particularly, the sooner the better. If you're talking about the jurisdiction MOAs that are still in process, at your earliest convenience is fine. As Chet mentioned, that's going to be something that's going to be rolling out over the next couple of months. There's plenty of time to get your input in, but as soon as you can. I would emphasize again to confer with your legal counsel and try to unify the input as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Eric, is the hope to be able to get it on the March 26th CVTA full agenda for approval as the stars align?
And that might be a little optimistic. Like I said, I sent in the GRTC version to legal counsel from the jurisdictions last week and requested they review it and provide input. Haven't heard back from anybody yet. Then that's fine. Didn't expect, people need to chew on it and talk it internally. But, if I don't start getting input within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start to ping people again, because I know there is some desire to move that forward. But end of March, we may have a draft to put up just for discussion or information purposes. But that's probably it.
Well, finance committee is not prepared to make a recommendation on Wednesday, so it will
certainly
be on the March
not.
agenda.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
so you need approval at the finance committee before it goes to full.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Got it. Okay, so April maybe.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Barb. Anybody have anything else? Okay, hearing nothing, we may adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.